Good afternoon and welcome back, everyone, to the third day of me talking about kindness. And what I wanted to jump on and talk about today is an element of that which is self-compassion. So being kind to ourselves and showing ourselves self-compassion. And that for me was the sort of second part of the acronym that I shared around kind, which the N was about nourishing your soul and looking at self-care, and the second part was around self-compassion, so an element of that and being kind to ourselves. So before I start, I just wonder, since yesterday, what self-care routine, self-care practice you've put in place, however small, as something really enjoyable for you to do and to look forward to, and really to take time out for yourself. I quite often find, of personal experience, that when I was talking about how we see ourselves yesterday, what I call my inner critic usually sort of chips away to say, you're this, you're that, you're not good enough. And actually, to show ourselves self-kindness, what I look to do is almost to tame that voice and listen to my inner coach instead, that inner coaching voice that says, maybe with affirmations, I am good enough, I am strong, I do look after myself, I'm a good person, whatever those affirmations are for me and for you as well. So just with that, I wonder what moment of confidence you can tune into today in terms of what you're doing, any achievements, however small, something to look forward to that can kind of put you in that space of confidence and hearing that kind of inner coach from yourself. But a little bit about self-compassion, really. And with self-compassion, it's not about if you like, a self-pity party. It's not all sort of poor me. And I think particularly with coronavirus at the moment and other circumstances, sometimes life is really tricky for us. And we need to do things in life that make things easier for us. And that's actually no bad thing. It's kind of lightening the load and being kind to ourselves. So I wanted to do today was to share some other ideas for self-care and showing ourselves, kindness, and also some tips around showing ourselves self-compassion as well. And just thinking, with it being Mental Health Awareness Week this week, is every day, however small, so it doesn't feel overwhelming, how can I show myself that self-kindness, that self-compassion in whatever small way that is? So some thoughts, some ideas for me today, and there's a million and one of them, and hopefully you saw earlier some ideas I found for a sort of evening self-care routine as well. And to show ourselves self-compassion, it's about really comforting ourselves. Now that could be eating a healthy comfort food, hence the sort of healthy comfort food. That could be simply wearing a favourite piece of clothing that makes us feel good and feels really comfortable. It could be about having a warm bath or shower. I know I often say it's not always about baths, and I shared a sort of quote yesterday which was really interesting. Quite often we think, that's got to be about me having a bath, having a shower. But, self-care comes in many different forms. You could watch an uplifting film just to zone out, something on Netflix, or maybe a funny video on YouTube that you can hook into, or maybe look at a book or look at a website, something with beautiful scenery, which kind of enables us to feel very calm and very peaceful, maybe some beautiful art. It's whatever fundamentally that gives you pleasure. I'm a big fan actually of listening to music. It really helps boost my mood. You may play an instrument, you may sing, and that might be another way of just tuning out on some self-care for you, remembering self-care is not selfish. Or you might want to lose yourself into a hobby. Playing an instrument could be that kind of thing, but just something that, however small, for however short a time, just kind of zones you out. So really it's whatever gives you comfort and enjoyment out of life, but really to commit to it, to make yourself do it, because in the knowledge that it's going to give you pleasure and comfort. And I think what's important here, there's no right way of taking care of ourselves. It's what feels right and feels good for you, you know, particularly as we're going through difficult times at the moment. So, really being kind to yourself, but being flexible with that as well. So you might want to kind of, you know, visualize, you know, some beautiful scenery, a beautiful beach, you know, visualize looking forward to what you'd like to do in the future, although we've got no clarity really on that, but it might be something around next year. And you know what, that puts us in more of a space of positivity and abundance about what can be and what can happen, rather than that place of scarcity. For me, I'm all for doing things, you know, for fun. Maybe walking away from negativity, watching something on Netflix, which I'm sure we're all doing at the moment. Maybe thinking about what you want to visualize, what you want to achieve next month, or simply as my evening self care poster showed earlier that I posted, which is just unplugging from social media, because that in itself can become very overwhelming. You might want to try Amazon Audible, as I said, or Netflix, or find yourself a new blog or a TED talk to listen to, maybe a bit of nostalgia, track back in time, you know, think about something you loved to do as a teenager and repeat that. And, you know, and something else for us to think about is to keep learning, you know, maybe a new hobby, an area of interest. So they can be bigger things, but they can be smaller things. I'm going to jump on tomorrow and talk a little bit about daily purpose as well, because it's about noticing things. So it could be simply about, you know, enjoying a lovely coffee, you know, each morning. It could be getting out in the garden and just listening to the bird song. It could be about receiving a sort of a funny text from a friend. I know, without undermining coronavirus and lockdown at the moment, you know, some of my family and friends have sent me some kind of funny text messages, just to kind of lighten the load and to lighten the mood. And maybe you want to sign up and do something, you know, voluntarily with a charity as well, which sort of takes the focus off ourselves, but also we can show that self-kindness in other ways to other people. So it is about us making a contribution. So, in some ways, you're helping others and you can help yourself feel good as well, and feel that you've been kind and you've offered an act of self kindness. Um, Even helping just one person is a start. You know, maybe it's sending a card, maybe it's, you know, baking something, you never know, and dropping it and leaving it on somebody's doorstep. You know, small ways that takes the focus off yourself and puts you in a more positive situation. In terms of the self-compassion, I'm a firm believer is to be compassionate to yourself, is to acknowledge feelings that come on for you. I often say kind of lean into them. And this is about not repressing them, not numbing them, not trying to put them in a box and hide them away, but to really be fair with yourself. And if those feelings come up, to honour and respect them, but then to see if you can shift and take a more balanced approach. So it's about acknowledging that negative self-talk, but also about celebrating successes and thinking about the positive and more gentle language as well. So we can be kind to ourselves, we can show ourselves self-compassion, and we can recognise that difficulties that we faced, you know what, we're not in it alone. They are shared human experiences. So we're not alone in our struggles. We kind of, you know, all have our good and our bad days, and important to show ourselves self-compassion. So when we have those chats to ourselves, which I know I do, it's to hear that inner coach, that positive voice, rather than the sort of inner critic. You may remember I spoke a couple of sessions ago about, and I put a picture up about, you know, pointing the finger, you know, at yourself and being quite, you know, belittling and quite negative. It's sort of talking to ourselves in real positive language, to be accepting and to support each other. You know, it is about training that negative self-talk, but really kind of listening and hearing that inner critic, you know, much more, and that kind of self-talk, and listening to that more attentively. And you know what? It takes time. I always say it's a bit like a mental muscle, if you like. You need to keep at it, and you kind of need to keep building up on it. so it has the sort of beneficial side effects. So it's important to accept our feelings and really to develop a kind attitude to ourselves. So I hope that's helped today with the sort of third day around kindness and on our self-kindness. I'll be back tomorrow around lunchtime. So I hope you've enjoyed listening in to this session. Something I forgot to say at the beginning, Nick Penderos from Clarity Kent Counselling, and enjoy the rest of your day. And I look forward to speaking with you tomorrow. Bye for now.